Hey Lions fans, I'm Vincent Menino. I'm going to host the Lion Digital Network Coaches Show this year. As school starts, we wanted to release a Coaches Show with all of our coaches here at Freed-Hardeman, recapping last year and looking ahead to this year. We hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Coaches Show. We're here with Amanda Cunningham, head volleyball coach here at Freed-Hardeman University. And wanted to start out, Amanda, asking you, you're someone who has experience playing at Freed-Hardeman in volleyball program, being an assistant coach in the volleyball program, and now taking over as the first full-time head coach only dedicated to volleyball. And so what's the biggest thing that the girls are going to gain from having one coach dedicated to one sport?
I think the biggest thing will be in the off season. So this year we were able to actually go and play in the off season, and they allow us through the NAIA 2 spring dates. So we went to Chattanooga and played, we went to Illinois and played, and just being able to practice together and play together with the new squad that's going to be returning was really beneficial for the girls. I was in the weight room with them twice a week. And so we were on the court twice a week, we were in the weight room twice a week. And so just having all that extra time to work on getting better in the spring that we haven't necessarily had in the past. I know as a player, before Coach Humphrey even had an assistant coach, it was just him.
Because you were the first assistant coach
Yes,
too, right?
I was the first assistant coach in the program. So I know when I was a player that in the spring I craved, to get better and to keep working, but it was more player led. And Coach Humphrey did a good job, and he would bring in a student to help us in the weight room. And so we usually had a weight training program, but it's just good for us to be able to get on the court too, and for them to have that coach feedback. And this year we were able to work on kind of a new style of offense and how we want to run this year with the girls that we have returning. And so overall, that's just going to be great for them to get that time and attention in both semesters.
Okay. So build off that. Talk about what you saw, the growth that you saw in your team in the spring. Maybe tell us a little bit about who's coming back. What are you expecting for this year?
So we actually lost quite a bit of people on varsity this year. We had 4 graduate, 4 seniors. They were all starters. And then we also lost our outside hitter, Jaden Watkins. She's married, and then she actually just had a baby. They had a baby.
Congratulations.
And so, yeah, it's really exciting for her. So she's already started her family. So she's moved back home because he's graduated, and so she's not returning. So that's 5 of our varsity starters that we will not have this year. And so it was really important for us in the spring to figure out, okay, who are we now? What roles can each person fill that have been vacated by the people graduating? And so especially our pin hitters have had to step up, because Jaden and Casey were our outsides, and then Ashlyn Clift was one of our right sides. So that's 3 attacker positions and a lot of our offense that was just gone. And so it gave our upcoming sophomores a really good opportunity to step up into those spots. I know in off-season, Audrey Orton, Avery Young, who saw some playing time this year, but not necessarily consistently, really stepped up for us as outside hitters, because your outside hitters are your go-to, and they're your offensive producers. And Casey Dunnigan is all conference, Jaden all conference. And so those are big holes to fill, especially when you don't have a lot of experience. And so getting to see them bloom into that, I guess, and
your younger players,
the younger girls, just bloom into what can I bring to this team, and then building their confidence in being offensive producers and scorers. And I loved just getting to see their strengths come out through that. And it also really helped us. So Adley Mays will be our returning setter, and she ran a 6-2 offense, which just means that there's 2 setters on the court. So one of them, they play back row, then they come out, and the other one comes in back row. And that way you have 3 hitters on the front all the time. But without Allie being there in the off season, our other setter, Adley was running a 5-1. And so us just working into, well, what does that system of offense look like? And Adley having to step up and take more responsibility to lead the offense the whole game. And it was fun to get to see her be really creative with her hitters. And she also brings a little bit of an offensive threat to her game that she really likes doing. So she'll set people, but then she will also try to score on her own sometimes just to keep the defense off guard. And so I really liked getting to see her try that out and experiment with, well, what's going to work, what's going to throw other teams off, what's too obvious, and just really seeing our offense just reset kind of from who we had to all these new girls. And what is that going to look like for us this year? And so the spring was super beneficial for us as a whole, just to see, well, who are we now that we lost all these girls? And what do we have left, and what can we do? What do we bring to the table?
So you started hitting on, I think, some strategy stuff.
Yes.
Watching volleyball games at Freed-Hardeman over the years, the thing that has confused me the most is substitutions and rotations.
Yes.
And I think you started talking about it,
Okay.
and that you started to lose maybe just a little bit.
Yes,
maybe. So,
yes, we can go over that.
when I watch a basketball game,
Uh-huh.
the coach walks down the bench and they say, okay, you go in for somebody else, right?
Uh-huh.
And I understand that interaction and something happens and then
Mhm.
whatever. In volleyball, everybody just sort of knows.
Yes.
Right? And so you're supposed to go in, it's your turn. There's a
Mhm.
rotation that goes on. Will you explain that a little bit? For
I'll try,
everybody to
yes.
understand?
It's a little complicated without drawing or something.
Yeah.
But so in volleyball, there are 6 positions on the court. That's why there's 6 players. And you just rotate in a circle.
Okay.
So you want your best hitters and blockers in the front row and your best passers in the back row. And so a lot of times, like our Kat Hackett is a good example. So she's over 6 feet tall. We're working on her defense. She got pretty good in the spring, so we're excited about that. But when it's her turn to go back row, we like to put in someone else who can contribute better in the back row. And this past season, it was Allie Humphrey, the setter, because when Adley moved to front row, our other setter, she had to go out so we could put a hitter in. So when Kat moved to the back row, we had to take Kat out and put a setter in. So it's really, they know who they're going in for, right? So this past year, Kat knew that Allie was her person going in because we needed a setter. And so they just can watch on the court where everyone is in that rotation. And they know, oh, Kat's about to go back to serve. I serve for her instead. So they just automatically go and rotate.
So
that
it's a
works
little
pretty
bit
well.
like, it's similar to basketball in that somebody who is excelling in a certain situation is going
Right.
to stay on the court a little bit longer.
Yes.
Somebody who has gotten tired or struggling, there's probably a position in basketball that a coach is subbing that same position for somebody.
Right.
The difference is in volleyball is everybody knows the rotation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go from the front line to the back line or the
Yes.
back line to the front line, that's a key time to make a substitution.
Yes. Now, sometimes some of our hitters, like, for example, Avery Harris last year, she's one of our best servers on the team. She has a really nasty serve. It's hard to read. And so we left her in to serve. And so she would rotate to the back just to serve. And as soon as the other team scored, then her sub knew to come in and get her.
Okay.
And so that way we had our defensive player back in. And then other circumstances, like, for example, in basketball, a lot of times people get subbed out when they're not doing well. But in volleyball, one of the hardest things to watch is a hitter goes up and gets the biggest kill of the game. It's epic. And then they rotate to the back row immediately after, and you're like, ah. And then they have to sub out because they're not a passer. And so that is a weird thing about volleyball because you kind of lose that momentum that girl had just developed by her not being out there to do it again.
Yeah.
And so the team has to stay up for that. But so that's kind of a weird thing. But if there's ever a situation where a player is not doing well, then it does kind of work like basketball, where I would go down the line and find someone in that position and put them in. Now, one thing about volleyball that's different than basketball and other sports is once you sub in a certain spot in the rotation, you can't go in another spot. So, like,
So
when
you're
you
talking
sub
about
for
that
one
pair.
person, yes. When you sub for somebody, you can't, like, if you go in, say you're a back row player, and you go in for a middle attacker, well, later you can't go in for an outside hitter.
Okay.
You're stuck in that spot in the
In
rotation.
the rotation.
So we have to be strategic as coaches about, well, if I use her now, but then someone else starts struggling, I won't be able to use her there. So that really affects, like, versatile players like Ari. Ari can be a middle, Ari can be a right side. So we have to really think, well, if I put her in now, what's going to happen if this happens? And so you really have to be strategic about who you sub for who, because once they do it, they're stuck.
This sounds like, as coaches, you put a lot of time into strategizing this ahead of time.
Yes.
Talk about how much time you spend communicating that to your team.
So really we just implement it in practice a lot. We'll just work on our rotations. One weird thing that we have to think about as well is what hitters connect best with what setters. Like this past year, we had 2 different setters. And so we had to think, well, which middle hits best off of Allie? Because we want that middle up there twice with Allie.
Okay.
And so you kind of have to think about things like that as well. So that's something that we play with a lot at the beginning of the year. Like what hitters and setters connect best. What hitters block best together, because sometimes that's a really big deal. And then another strategy in volleyball that you don't have to think about in other sports is how you line up against the people across the net. So if their best hitter is front row, you want your best blocker front row.
Okay.
And so you have to kind of, we watch that in film, we scout that, where are their players and how do we want to line up so that we bring the best to the table to compete against what they've got in each rotation. And that's something a lot of coaches will change mid-game too. Well, between sets. So they'll start in one starting position, then they'll see what we did, and then they'll go back and they'll change it for the next set and rearrange where people are standing. So they might rotate 2 positions so that their best attacker's going against our worst blocker. And so it kind of is a chess game in that sense where you're trying to see what they're doing and adjust. And I think that's one of the coolest things about volleyball is just the in-game adjustments and how the other team responds to you, and then what are you going to do back and stuff. It's like that in all sports, but it's interesting in volleyball because sometimes when you set up that rotation, you can't be like, I don't really want her against
set to set.
You can change it from set to set.
And the substitution, you can change.
You can change who's in that spot, but you can't move them over 2 spots mid-game.
Right, okay.
So you really have to think. You have to just be aware of what the other team's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really interesting.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't tell you I was going to do this. We're doing this with everybody. We're playing a game. You're going to have 60 seconds to name as many NAI schools that are not Mid-South members as you can.
Ooh, okay.
Okay? And we got a timer. All right. And go.
Fisk, Tougaloo, Lion, Park. NAI. Okay. Faulkner, Philander Smith. I'm trying to think of people that we play. Bruton Parker, Life, Crawley's Ridge, who else? Kentucky Christian, Ohio Valley University. Not one? I think that is one. Oh, they don't exist anymore. My bad. Well, they used to be. Who else? I'm trying to think of different states. Oh, Bryan College, Talladega. I don't think so. Milligan. That's about all the ones I got on the top of my head. We used to play all the ones in the AMC, and I can't remember any of them. No. Okay.
All right, we're calling this.
We're just calling it because I can't think of any more.
I think you got 13. We will reveal for everybody at the end of all of these.
Man,
we'll reveal
I'm
the
competitive. I don't like.
We've got 9 full-time coaches here at Freed-Hardeman, and we'll have all these video series, and we'll announce the winner at the end of them. So
I should have had my map with me. I made a whole map of every school in the NAIA within like 7 hours.
For scheduling?
For scheduling purposes.
Yeah.
So if I'd had my map, I could have given you about 100.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
All right, we'll be back after this break.
Hey Lions fans, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, toggle that notifications bell to all so you don't miss any new videos. Remember, you can always see all of our updates and news at gofhulions.com, and also remember to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.